Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is where I talk about all things spiritual. We do it in a live format like this. So, if you're just joining me at the moment, you'll be able to ask me some questions. If you come back a bit later, you can always ask some questions or put some comments or give some answers of what you think in the description, in the comments below. So, welcome to a live Coffee with Craig. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the show. So this is a live version. If you want to catch the live versions, you're just going to have to follow the channel because I kind of just throw them out there every now and again, which I think is a bit more fun and actually puts me a bit more on the spot too, which I think is more interesting. Because today I'm going to take your questions about all things paranormal, really, but mainly about topical things, what's going on in the world today. And as you know, on Coffee with Craig, I quite often talk about all things associated with what's going to happen in the future, and where the world's going and what we can do about it, and if we can what's our part in it, really. How can we make the world a bit of a better place? What's our spiritual perspective on these things? Not religious, spiritual. What's the in a way, sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes it's the most obvious things that are the answers to the most difficult questions. I mean, and there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. I mean, I've made a number of predictions about a few things, like such as what was going to happen in the Middle East. I was looking over one of my 2024 ones recently, and you'll notice that I said there'd be the conflict with Yemen as well, and that's just happening at the moment as we speak. Certainly, it must be all over the American news. It's certainly over the British news because British warships have been involved in this. So in the Middle East, I've been talking about how the war, I suppose we call it war, conflict, whatever we want to call it, what's going on in Gaza, I've already said would spill over. And I've said that I feel that it would spill over ultimately into Iraq, to affect Iran as well. And the news is all saying, isn't it, about that Lebanon is being backed by Hezbollah, and all the rest are being backed by Iran, and Yemenites are being backed by Iran. And really, but the problem behind it all is Iran also making lots of quite sophisticated drones now, which are going into Ukraine. So that was something that I've talked about. I'm sure those of you that follow the channel would spot some of the things that I've said about that. We could perhaps look into that a bit more, because what I will do, excuse me, what I will do is sort of just try to sort of tune in a little bit for you, just see what I can pick up from my guides. So it's a bit of a more slower paced show, this one, where so I've not got a load of pre-prepared predictions for you. I'll take your questions, and I'll also be interested in some of your answers, what you think as well, as we move along. So you can have some questions from you in a moment. A lot of you flood in nowadays, because the channel's getting quite a big following. So I do try to keep to asking questions if you can, not so much discuss between each other in the comments, because it's terribly difficult for me to spot them, because I'm just doing this on my own here. So Middle East, where's that going to go? That's going to be something interesting. We'll have a think about that. I'm also very interested in what's happening in British politics at the moment, because you remember I said that the Tory party is going to get into serious problems, and that I feel that Rishi Sunak will go. And there seem to be lots of pressures on him at the moment, because my feelings are with the Tory parties, they're going to be absolutely slaughtered unless he goes and something more comes in. So we can perhaps have a think about that as well. And any other topics actually that you like me to address, and I'll see what I can pick up. So what I'm going to do, so you see, this evening I'm doing one of my online workshops, so I've get myself in a very sort of fluid state through the day, getting myself more and more a little bit tuned in to the spirit world. So I want to try to. So I feel them very much around me at the moment. Some of my spirit guides have been working with me today. I've just come out of a meditation, so I'm preparing myself for the workshops tonight at 7 o'clock. But I'm also, I want to just sort of see what I can pick up. So I can take some of your questions now, guys. And let's first of all see if there's any particular question anybody wants to seed to me. First of all, about things in the Middle East, because if you can think of a good question, I'll look at it and then I'll just close my eyes and see what I'm given. So it's kind of a spontaneous thing. With mediumship, particularly, it's always very important to get your logical mind out of the way. I know that sounds a bit everything. It goes against everything we've ever spoken about in school and things like that. We're taught to think about things, but with all this, one has to put your logical mind aside. Okay, there's an interesting one. Okay, Kosovo, Serbia. I'm interested you just put that up. Actually, I'm interested you put that up because just as I was coming in to this reading here today, I was hearing an kind of an inner voice saying to me, and this triggered it when you put that up, Slim. Thanks. An inner voice said to me, Europe could become the new Yugoslavia. I just heard that, and of course, the implications of that are pretty important, aren't they? Because when you think what happened in Yugoslavia, we had we had what's his name, Slobodan Milosevic, and all those horrible people turning upon ethnic communities, and we're beginning to see now, aren't we, in places like Germany? Because I've been talking this a lot since 2015. I've been feeling that there's going to be a huge swing in Europe to the right, and it's happened, hasn't it? It's happened just recently in Holland, in the Netherlands. We get that big swing to the right for good or bad. You know, I'm not commenting. It's just what I'm seeing. I saw that coming, and I've been saying for a while that there's going to be much more of this. We're going to get a big right swing in the world. I think in some respects, it's people wanting to find their sense of nationhood again, isn't it? Really. And I also just keep into the Kosovo and places like that. You see, I have also said that I feel that the Ukrainian war could spill into all that area. And although it's kind of been pushed back now for quite a long time, because the Ukrainians, as I said before the war started there, that there would be a war in Ukraine, you remember? And I said that the Ukrainians would fight back far more fiercely than anybody expected and push them back ultimately, I feel. But it could nonetheless still spill over. So I feel in 2024, we're going to get wars spilling over. And this worries me quite a lot. Let's see if I can see anything specific now with this. You know, I don't know whether this is my own mind coming to it, but there was these beginning of the First World War started when the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I was just getting a vision there of somebody assassinated in one of those areas like Serbia, Kosovo, something like that. Assassination attempt on somebody political. I'm not saying that's the start of the First World War or anything like that, but I'm just I'm just getting a sense of an assassination attempt on somebody, a European politician linked to the Caucasus, and it's something to do with the Ukrainian war, which is getting forgotten so much. And yeah, so that's one thought on that. Okay, let's just see if let's take another one. Hang on, you're going so fast. I have spoken before about Taiwan. I thought it was going to happen already, actually. So I'm a bit behind with my predictions here. But I've been saying for a long time with China that China will try to make a move on Taiwan. I don't think they'll ever conquer it as such, but I get the sense that some of the outer sort of island areas, which, there have been disputes over the island areas, but I feel something that's occupied already by Taiwan might get taken. So there is kind of a saber rattling there, like, we've taken an island off you, what you're going to do about it, sort of feel. And I've said before that I feel that a conflict could erupt there over some accidental collision. I said it could be an airplane collision, or originally I said a submarine collision, or maybe both. There's something like that where we've had a lot of near misses, actually, where people have been testing each other, flying up close to one another and things like that. I feel like one of those is going to go wrong. And the new leader of Taiwan, I feel, will hold their ground, will be very strong. I feel Taiwan is going to get help, actually, from Japan too. Japan's going to get involved in this a little bit more, and there's going to be technology shared between each country, between Taiwan and Japan. The two of them are going to interchange and share technology, which can be used militarily. It won't be seen as a military type of connection, but it will be done. It will be sort of hidden, as it were. So I'm seeing very advanced forms of air defenses too coming into Taiwan. Ultimately, I feel, others will get drawn into this. Australia in particular, I feel, will have battleships in that region. And I feel this is going to be in 2024. I do feel this is good, because it's like our eye is being taken off the ball. Look what they can get away with in Ukraine, when the eyes of the world are now on the Middle East. And while the eyes are on the Middle East, what could we also get away with around the world? And let's face it, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but we haven't got any strong leaders in the democratic world. I can't hardly name anybody who is a strong leader you could really trust in to get us out of problems, or be able to negotiate deals with very difficult adversaries. So a long time ago, you remember, I said there would be an alliance between Russia, between China, and Iran. You remember, I spoke about that so long ago now. 2000, again, early predictions when I first went live, started really getting serious with this channel. Unfortunately, that's happened. So interesting. Other question coming in there: will Hong Kong be free again? Because that's kind of in the theme of what we're talking about here. Because I felt ultimately, and I've said this before, so I'm kind of repeating a few bits here again. Unfortunately, we need some new stuff, don't we? I feel that with China, it will ultimately break up. There's going to be a cave-in ultimately in China, and that's not right now. That's coming, but it will come in due course. That the Communist Party will fail in China eventually, and that will come when there's serious economic difficulties, which are there, kind of teetering on the edge with property and things like that. People are not so tolerant of their leaders when things go economically wrong, and now China is dependent on having a good material world. If they don't have a good material world, people are going to change their minds. And ultimately, I feel that China will break up into multiple countries, including the freeing of Hong Kong and the liberation of Tibet, and also breaking itself up into smaller countries, which will work exceedingly well and have a form of democracy there, based upon the earlier teachings of Sun Yat-sen, which I've talked about before. So I'm talking about similar things, but what I've spoken before. So let's see if we've got some other. See, I'll keep with the Chinese one, because we haven't done a lot on China for a while. When will foreign investment funds flow into Chinese stocks again? My feeling is that's going to be quite some time yet, actually. I'm seeing money coming out of China. it's I feel it's people. I don't know anything about economics of China. I add, but my sense is money's been trying to come back into China now, but there's going to be a reversal of that. And even whether what I feel that Trump will win the next election in America, but even if the Democrats were to win, China's not going to be able to keep its lucrative deals with the West going as it had. It's grown first and foremost from the West, but now it's self-perpetuating. But foreign investment I see moving away. It will go to countries, for example, like Vietnam. It will go to countries such as Mexico. Investments will, foreign investments and trade and manufacturing, I'm talking presumably here a lot about, I feel, will come also very much into India, who will come to the fore in the future. So these are things I've spoken about before, and Indonesia will do very well out of this as well. These will be unusual sort of countries, but I feel that it will be a prosperous future for places like Vietnam. It will also mean that Mexico becomes prosperous. And if Mexico becomes very prosperous, it might solve part of the immigration problem that America has. The people won't need to cross borders to make a living. They'll be able to have a living in their own homes. And just seeing with Mexico too, because I know they've had a lot of problems there recently with the gang warfares and things, and the drug dealers and the cartels. And I'm seeing a new kind of sweep up of cartel gangland people. I'm seeing a military operation with influences from another country coming in and helping the Mexicans to break a huge cartel. I'm making these predictions, by the way, in January of 2024. So I feel this is happening soon. This may be happening in the next month or so. I'm seeing a huge bust, as it were, in Mexico, just being shown to me as I'm talking to you now. So let's see if that happens. And I feel it would be for the good, because I see Mexico starting to get back onto its feet again economically with new investment there. But this has to be sorted out first. I don't think there will be peace in the Middle East in 2024. I think we've got nearly 3 years of this, I feel. 2 years, we've got 2024, 2025 is both difficult years all around the world. I feel that it starts to ease off after those 2 years. Xi Jinping, I felt as if there's something wrong with his health, as I do with Putin. But if Xi Jinping's taken out of power, I feel someone even worse might come into power behind him. But that might be a triggering point for people wanting to sort of change their minds about their government, right? People in China are scared to speak out. But I do feel that things are going to change, and I think there might be some serious things ahead. But I don't think we're talking about 2024 here. I get the feeling this is 2025 that we're talking about this, late into that. Okay. I've said Indonesia. I'm just looking at some of your comments. So many coming in now. It's a little bit. Wokeness in Sweden. You see, I think wokeness is one of the, I don't know how you guys feel. Do please put comments later on when we finish. What are your thoughts about these things? But I think the wokeness is like an illness. I think my feeling is, when you look at it spiritually, right? Because this is from a spiritual point of view, all this wokeness, what is it? It's like political correctness gone mad. I've done things like yoga classes, and I've run yoga classes, trained as a full yoga teacher, for example. And quite often I go into these places and I look at these people that are teaching, and I think, well, you don't strike me as very strong people. You all seem to be a bit self-indulgent, and you kind of carry quite big egos and things like that. And I think, well, the whole objective of what yoga was all about was about discovering fearlessness and discovering the invincibility of our spirit and things like that, and even-mindedness and all these things. And yet so many people now seem to sort of flip off into this world of poor me. And that's kind of what's happened when wokeness is about in my right, right idea. Yeah, I mean, it's not intended for that. It's all about inclusivity, but it's gone from inclusivity into something much bigger, which is about poor me, I think. So we get your wokies in the world. We also get your Trumpies in the world on the other side of things, where you can go a bit too far the other way too, can't you? So it's finding a middle way. But I've always worried for Sweden, because I feel that Sweden is one of the countries that's going to turn against the idea of this wokeness, and I feel it's going to go turn against the mistaken over migration, too much migration. You know, it's not the illegal migration that's the worry, it's too much migration. And I think it's undermined the whole Swedish self-confidence in itself. And we're going to get, this is what I said, I see that the Europe is going to become like another Yugoslavia, because people are going to start pushing people out, and people are going to start to turn. The pendulum swings in history. And I feel the pendulum is beginning to swing in Sweden. It's already happened in Holland, and some very serious concerns happening in Germany, which isn't often reported in, certainly not on the BBC and things like that. There's very serious concerns where some of the extreme right-wing people are almost getting to the point of what Nazism was all about, you know. And we've got to be very careful, because it could all happen again. It's happened it's happened in my lifetime, hasn't it, with what happened in the Caucasus in Yugoslavia, and we see it all around the world, people turning against each other because of divisions in religion, divisions in, and I think wokeness creates division. It creates terrible division. We need to I pray that we become stronger people, you know, and more self-confident people, and that we can teach our young to be confident in being who they are, whatever race or sex they are. Be confident about who you are, and try to instead of trying to be something different to what you are, because that's a dangerous form of escapism and weakness. So I feel the two go together. Woke and weak go together. Anyway, that's me going on. What do you think about David Cameron coming back into politics? Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. I mean, it took me by surprise, because I didn't see any of that when I was making my political predictions. And when I think about David Cameron, he messed everything up, didn't he? I mean, he was a remoaner, and started the whole Project Fear. In his foreign policies in the past, he's been absolutely hopeless with everything he's done in the past, and now we chuck him in to start doing negotiations. How is he going to help with negotiations in the Middle East? He could only, I think, inflame situations. And for me, it shows the huge weakness of Rishi Sunak, who doesn't have the sort of strength of character to be able to give us positive ideas about what we should or shouldn't be doing around the world. I mean, by that, I mean, I see Rishi Sunak, for example, it weakens Rishi Sunak to have to bring in a previous prime minister. And the guy, Rishi Sunak, seems to always be trying to appease everybody. It's like he doesn't want to upset anyone. And by having this grayness, he's got the mind of an accountant, hasn't he? That grey mind of an accountant, with nothing to, no flag to follow, even a spiritually inspired idea or something like that. You know, there's nothing. They offer us nothing, except David Cameron, which is, you know, here comes the new boss, just as bad as the old boss, as the Who said, you know, and David Cameron would bring back the old boss. So it's weakening things, I think, and it can only do harm. And again, very good. Well, we're talking politics now rather than spirituality, but don't you think that Blaire, in my opinion anyway, is one of the worst influences, as bad as Cameron? Actually, Cameron was bad, but look at Blaire. What did he do? He wanted us to open the borders to everything and bring the flood of immigration, and now he's advising the Labour Party about what their policies should be over migration. So what are we going to have? More wokey vibe, more wokiness, more a Blaire landslide happening for the Labour Party. But with it, what does come with it? What comes with it? It comes lots of pro-European again, which is not necessarily what the country want. You see, I think the politics of the country is really missing the single most important thing. People are not worried about, they are worried about money, but they're not so worried about the money and the hospitals and the doctors' pays and all the rest of it as much, which all these are big worries, as much as they are worried about we're losing our country's identity. And I'm afraid migration, not just illegal migration, which is a tip of the iceberg and all that Rwanda things, a complete smokescreen, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but it's the migration people don't want, and unless they really do something serious about it, you know, and it's not just white Anglo-Saxon males that are saying this. People that are integrated into Britain and have been here for a long time from all races are all saying the same thing. We can't have this. It's bringing down. Do we need in Britain more Turkish hairdressers? Do we need more goat herders in Britain? Do we need these skill sets that are coming in at the moment? No, Blaire had a lot to do with that, I think, Jason. I don't know what you think that the same. What do you say? You could always tell that Blaire was a smarty. Smarmy sod. Yes, he was a bit, wasn't he? But could you? He was voted in by a landslide, wasn't he? Right. And I think also, just going with this, I saw someone see here. Oh, can't going so fast. Hang on. Macron. Grabbed him too, because the same is happening in France, isn't it? We're getting a similar sort of issue. Oops, lost my camera. I'm back again. I blitzed. I went like that for a minute. Yeah, we got the same problems in France, haven't we? I mean, the French people are feeling the same. This is not only a national crisis that we have in Britain, in Sweden, in Germany, in Holland, in France, in America too, has got the same problem. It's a global problem, isn't it? And I think we have to rethink we have to rethink our nationhoods. I think, you know, is it such a bad thing that there are nations? You know, I think nations are good things, just like it's good to have regions. I mean, you go to Yorkshire and it's a different mindset to if you go to Cornwall, you know, and so on. This is good. We love these sort of things, but these things weaken as time goes on and language changes and things because of movement of people. But sometimes you could, if it get too much of it too quick, it wipes out areas of country. Hence you get things like Welsh nationalism and you get Scottish nationalism, because it feels, again, their identities are kind of challenged. There's a whole thing about this, about my identity. And it's the same thing, you know, our identity here in the UK. You go to London and you don't see hardly any English people there, traditional, what I would call traditional English people, who've had their grandfathers and great grandfathers born in Britain, and that's not a racial thing. That's a cultural problem that we have in the country. Multiculturalism damages it, I feel, and the same thing's happening everywhere. The French are thinking exactly the same, and Macron will pay the price, because Macron, I feel, will be out and Le Pen will be in. And it's happened in Italy too, hasn't it? We had more right wing, as they call it. So this is going to be one of the most serious issues of the coming 2 years, I feel. And I was talking about this so long ago, and now I see it all happening, and it worries me because we don't want to go to either extreme. The problem is we've lost the middle ground, but I think also we've lost our self-confidence. I feel the West has lost its mojo. I mean, if you wanted, it was always, you look to America to build big and do things big scale, you know, all the great industries of America, and we go to the moon and all that. Now that's all kind of weak. It's all, we look to the East now, and we see China doing these things. So that's not wrong, because we want China to be successful too. But we also, each country has to have its identity back. And I think this is one of the biggest worries I think, the way ahead. What do you think? Put some comments below on all these things, because I think there's such interesting things to discuss. I mean, I'm not just here to make predictions, but I want to sort of do this really from a spiritual standpoint. What is the spirit of the age at the moment? You look. My Jane says to me sometimes, "Oh, they were so much more together in the 1950s," and when she looks and the 40s and 30s and things, when she watches these sentimental TV programs, and I say, yeah, and they also sent people to concentration camps in those days. So even when we've seemingly have a less a more gentler society, behind the scenes horrible things were going on. So I think the spirit of the age is important, and I think the only way out of our problems, surely the only way out of our problems, is some form of spiritual awakening. And I just feel it almost ready to burst onto the scene. There are good things going on in the background. There's a lot of people. Look how many people here are following this. Okay, this is just one tiny corner of the internet. But, I a lot of you that watch this are thinking spiritually, aren't you? Thinking about these things. Where is it going to go? What we're going to do? We're all a bit lost. We're all worrying about what's the future going to hold? Where can all this go? And we can't look to anywhere and say, well, there we can get some truth. We look to the news and we get a load of codswallop. We look to the we do, don't we, really? BBC and the rest of it. And we see adverts and we get bombarded with kind of political type of advertising being put in it. And we see international companies who are only interested in being the international company, no interest in that nationhoods or, this is a great British brand or a great French brand or a great Japanese brand. All of these things get swamped by this this globalism that also suffocates us. I mean, the time will come, surely, when there will be international companies that are bigger than countries in their power. I mean, already there's companies out there like Apple and so forth that have probably, I don't know the facts on it, but they have as much spending power as the whole of Belgium for something, or more. And it's going to become like that. And where do we end up with that? What happens with the power in the hands of business? This is something that's always worried me too, actually, what I see for the future, because the biggest step forward and advancement that's in our world at the moment surely has to be artificial intelligence. Who controls the artificial intelligence? The government and politics haven't the faintest idea. They've not even caught up with what Facebook's all about at the moment. There's some programs on Facebook recently on telly, but they're still the same place. I wrote to the government years ago about Google because I felt I was upset. They said, write to your MPs about that. I wrote to my MPs about some of the things I felt was scary about Google. They could not get their head around the idea of what an algorithm was. And these were the politicians at the time. This is going back a bit, but they couldn't understand what we meant by an algorithm and how an algorithm changes and influences social societies in huge ways. Think what artificial intelligence would do, and think what it could do in the hands of companies that are there entirely to make profit. The power is enormous. I mean, companies like Tesla, for example, have doubled their wealth in the last year and so forth. Some of these global corporations, some of the richest billionaires are doubling their wealth. Soon we're going to have trillionaires. What power would you have with that as an individual? So we worry about the Chinese Communist Party. We worry about the Democrats or the Republicans. We worry about the Tories or the Labour. But the hands of power now is moving away from us, and there's nothing any of us seem to be able to do about it, is there? And who knows, even that artificial intelligence might have its own mind. It can mimic humans in a clever way at the moment. We just don't know where we will go. So I've gone off more into a rap. I was hoping to sort of just tune in a little bit for you and tell you a few more things. But I think a lot of you agree with this. Do you think the same sort of things as me? You're spot on. My own intuition tells me the same The veil is thin. That's for the spiritual world coming through, I hope. What else? I'm a bit all over the place. Yeah, they are a bit. I've just been on a sort of a unplanned one today. And I just came straight in with it. I think the biggest 3 events this year. I said about earthquakes. I think we're going to get some major earth things still. I said, you remember, I said about Iceland, didn't I? And I said about some of the predictions I made about earthquakes came true almost immediately in the year after I made the predictions. I think we got a big one coming somewhere, a really big one. That's going to be one of the main events. Middle East is going to be obviously one of the biggest events, in Taiwan. Oh, that one, I thought. Housing situation, I'll just do this last one actually, and I'll click you off as well because then I can move on. So I think with the housing, I think housing's in the UK, if you're talking about UK, I get a feeling it's going to get a bit better for people in the UK with housing. House prices have dropped. I feel they're going to start going up. This is a good time to buy now, definitely a good time to buy. We could go on and on, couldn't we? I might do, I'd quite fancy doing these regularly actually, just coming in and just doing one. Without planning it, just have a chat with you guys, see what you think. If you like this type of way of doing things, to say yes in the comments, or say, Craig, I prefer it if you just plan it and give me a list of predictions every now and again rather than regular like this. But I'll see if we can do a few more later on, because hopefully I'll have a bit more time this week to do some more. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. If anything, I get some fun out of this. All right, we'll see you soon then, guys. Bye for now. Well, my latest book is called Be Happy. This is If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, The Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism. And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. And funnily enough, actually, another royal prediction came true only yesterday, which surprised me really, because it was such a weird prediction I'd made. I predicted in my earlier videos from 2021 for 2022 that the king, I said Prince Charles at the time because he wasn't actually king at that time, but I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg.
And of course, there it is, all in the press today.